talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Thursday morning edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Hope everybody's ready. Fun show. Things are finally starting to slow down a little bit on the coaching carousel. We still got ourselves a jam-packed episode here on a Thursday. We're going to open. Only job that's still open, it feels like, Penn State. What is going on? Listen, I think this is literally one of the worst coaching, situations that we have ever seen. We're going to break it all down. I don't know where they go. I don't know how they salvage this. And I think, as importantly, does this kind of prove that maybe Penn State isn't the job that we thought it was? From there, we'll talk about BYU. I think it's just starting to become obvious now that whether they are good enough or not, the committee is taking them way too lightly. We'll get into the BYU conversation. We'll talk a little bit about the conference championship games this weekend. I'll give you my picks in the SEC, the Big Ten, etc. Then we will wrap with a little bit of college hoops, because as much as things change, they stay the same. John Calipari putting that beat down on the Louisville Cardinals. It wasn't really a beatdown. It was actually a pretty close competitive game. So we'll wrap with some college hoops. Auburn beats NC State. Virginia takes care of Texas. Fun Wednesday in the world of college hoops. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you're subscribed. Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. Listen, you know by now, new clips, new videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support. We're about 160 subscribers away from 67,000, which is unbelievable to me. I truly appreciate everybody's support. If you are not subscribed, now's the time to do so. You can also find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Before we also get started, do want to thank our friends and our ticketing partners, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. So it's that time of year, right? Maybe you're an Alabama fan. Maybe you're a Georgia fan, BYU, Texas Tech. You're looking for last-minute tickets to the game this weekend. Or maybe your football team stinks and it's time to transition to basketball. Maybe your football and basketball team stink and you need to go to a concert or a show. Well, that's why you need to use SeatGeek, my friends. They are America's #1 ticketing app, over 28 million downloads. And what I love about SeatGeek, it's two things, and I keep telling you this, but it's so important, is one, every ticket on SeatGeek rated 1 through 10 with a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means, look, we love the venue. We love the show you want to see, but maybe don't buy that ticket. And so that's what I love about SeatGeek. But what I really, actually, truly love about SeatGeek, they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. Okay, so if you go to SeatGeek.com, if you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, you get, how about this, $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, SeatGeek app, promo code Torres, $20 off your first purchase. With that said, it is a busy Thursday in the world of sports. There is no more time to waste. So, people, let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. What the heck is going on at Penn State? All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this Penn State situation. It is now Thursday, okay? And it's crazy. I even go back to this past Sunday, right? We're waiting on all this Lane Kiffin stuff with Ole Miss and LSU. Then, boom, Auburn has a hire. Boom, Arkansas has a hire. Boom, Florida has a hire. Boom, the Lane Kiffin stuff figures itself out. You wake up the next day, you realize, wait a second, now Penn State doesn't still have its head coach. What is going on there? Then, how about this? Kentucky fires and hires a new coach within 24 hours. It just shows you how quickly this stuff happens now. And I'll tell you this, I thought coming into maybe Monday, Tuesday, there must be some big secret about what is going on at Penn State. Well, fast forward, there is no secret. And the bottom line is this is trending, I think, as quite literally one of the worst coaching processes that I have ever seen. And I'll be totally transparent. I think it's time to start asking big picture questions of just how good of a job is Penn State actually, okay? And so let's go ahead and go back to the situation when James Franklin was fired, okay? And I don't want to spend a ton of time relitigating old stuff, okay? But even when James Franklin was fired, you can go back to that day's episode, and I still, listen, I'm not somebody that fights for all these guys. Like Hugh Freeze had to go at Auburn. Like, you can't score 3 points against Kentucky at home. Billy Napier had to go at Florida. But when James Franklin got fired, I said, I guess that I get it. I guess that your argument for years has been, we're so close. The only teams we can't beat are Ohio State, Michigan when they're a national championship contender, everybody. And then when you lose to UCLA and Northwestern, it gives you not much of a leg to stand on. And I think especially in the moment, to be fair, Drew Aller gets hurt against Northwestern. You look at the schedule. If you remember, the 3 games after Drew Aller's injury were at Iowa, at Indiana, it was Iowa, Indiana, and at Ohio State. And you just sat there and said, you have no chance. You have no chance of reaching your potential and doing what you expected to do. And so I guess in the moment I sort of got it, but I'm also not going to do revisionist history. In the moment, I was like, this feels like an awfully lot of money to go ahead and pay a guy that did win about 75% of his games as your head coach. And especially when you factor in taking out the COVID season, year 1, whatever, he won a lot of games. And in the moment, I felt like it was crazy. Give me 1/2 second. Sorry. Had a little noise there in the background. So in the moment, I even said, listen, if this is what Penn State feels like they need to do, then Penn State should do it. But it felt a little bit reactionary. And I think what we're starting to realize in real time is really 2 things. I think the first one is Pat Kraft, the AD, he was in the moment kind of seen as this bold, innovative risk taker. And by the way, I should even backtrack and say we're recording here about 11:15 Eastern time on Thursday. By the time you watch this, Penn State may have a new head coach. It doesn't change the fact that this coaching search was a disaster, okay? Because here's the real deal. When Pat Kraft fired James Franklin, I think we all had these visions of, what does this job look like? 100,000 seat stadium, new era, Big Ten, big revenue, NIL. Well, what we're seeing is a lot of people are really happy where they are, okay? So first of all, you go back to the day he's fired. Everyone thinks it's going to be Matt Rule. I was told that Matt Rule actually was a legitimate candidate. Then Matt Rule went out, messed around, and lost to Minnesota like literally a week later. And Penn State's people were like, you cannot hire this dude. Matt Rule, whether he was a legitimate candidate or not, he gets his extension. Kurt Cignetti gets an extension. Going throughout the season, I know Jeff Brom, there's been weird, has he signed something, has he not? But he clearly indicated this week he is not going anywhere. I think when I started to realize, what is Penn State going to do? It was when Eli Drinkwitz, I think it was Thanksgiving morning, maybe it was Black Friday. I think it was Black Friday going into the Missouri-Arkansas game. Eli Drinkwitz is like, no, I'm staying at Missouri, but I would too for $11 million a year. When Eli Drinkwitz make $11 million a year, that's another conversation. Okay. Anyway, so all these guys start coming off the table. And what I will tell you is, like I said, Monday into Tuesday, I started saying, we're running out of candidates here. And you couldn't even sit there and say like, well, wait a second. Now it's clearly somebody that's coaching this week because Bob Chesney goes to UCLA. Obviously, Kalani Sitake was the big swing that, listen, we're going to talk BYU in a second. I've been there a couple times this year. It's a unique place, but it is an awesome place. And when you're one of their own, it just, I don't ever think, listen, Penn State fans are going to tell you, he verbally agreed and he this or that, whatever. Until a piece of paper is signed, nothing is done. And I will go to my grave believing that was more of a leverage play. Kalani Sitake was making $3 million a year when Kenny Dillingham and Deion Sanders in his own conference were at like the $8.5 million mark. And so I never believed Kalani Sitake was a candidate, but I just bring it up because this thing is a total train wreck. By the way, Brian Hartline, who you sat there and said, like, is that like a fringe, maybe worst case? He took the USF job on Thursday. So this thing is trending in the wrong direction. The latest that Pete Nakos reported on Wednesday, so again, always subject to change, is that the interim head coach, Terry Smith, may just end up getting this job, okay? And so, listen, this is absolutely no disrespect intended to the interim head coach. But at the same time, when this search started, there was 0.000% chance that you thought Terry Smith, who as recently as a decade ago was coaching high school football, has never been a head coach, has never even been a coordinator. There was never a world where you thought this guy was going to be the answer long term. And don't sell me on this, don't sell me on that, don't sell me on he's one of our own. This was never the plan. And so we'll see if Pat Kraft, the AD, has a rabbit to pull out of his hat. But it doesn't change the fact that no matter how this ends, barring some shocking hire that nobody saw coming, I don't know how you salvage this, and I don't know how you say that this was anything other than an unmitigated disaster. I'll add this too. I think this is an important part of the context here, is that one, the coaching search is a disaster. You know who else is starting to notice not just that the coaching search is a disaster, but that there is literally no one in the head coaching position other than an interim as of 11:17 Eastern time? It's recruits. Okay, so Wednesday was National Signing Day. And I'll say this, I think in some ways Penn State is lucky. National Signing Day used to be this huge thing. You tune into TV all day. Whose letters of intent are coming in off the fax machine at what time? Now it was kind of an afterthought with the conference championships, with all the coaching moves, etc. But I bring it up because did you see where Penn State's recruiting class is right now? So 24/7 Sports. Let me even backtrack. I'll just give you some stats, okay? At one point, Penn State, when James Franklin was the head coach, had 24 commitments in the late summer, early spring. Top 10, top 12. Yeah, I think it was like the 14th ranked class or something like that. It might have been 17. It might have been 14. Don't crush me. I don't know the exact number, okay? By National Signing Day, and Matt, you could pop the tweet, Penn State was down to 2 commitments overall. So they went from 24 commitments to 2. As of late Wednesday. Now, this has sort of been updated, and I don't think that's a good thing. They literally were not ranked. Their recruiting class was not ranked in the 24/7 database. It stopped at 163. The rankings for people who are not watching on YouTube, it went Brown, yes, the Ivy League school at 162. Colgate at 163. I do hear Colgate is recruiting their butt off this year, but after that, they stopped ranking teams, and there is Penn State with 2 overall commitments. And so this is a disaster. As of 11/18, they do not have a head coach. They have 2 kids signed. By the way, remember, this was a senior-laden class. And I'll just add this. It is worth noting. You know who did end up with a top 25 class on Wednesday? Virginia Tech. So James Franklin goes to Virginia Tech, and this doesn't have to be like a crush Penn State to elevate James Franklin thing, but it is worth noting James Franklin in 2 weeks on the job got Virginia freaking Tech into the top 25 of the recruiting rankings. Looked it up for fun on on Thursday morning, of the commits that are committed to Virginia Tech. This is crazy. Matt, you could pop up the tweet if we have it, is I think they have about 24, 25 commits. Let's see here. They have 21 commitments. 14 of them were previously committed to Penn State. It's crazy. Every time I logged on to social media a day or two ago, Hayes Fawcett was tweeting out a picture of another kid flipping from Penn State to Virginia Tech. So to recap, no head coach. The interim might get it in a situation where nobody was projecting him as a legitimate candidate. You are down to 2 recruits, which has you ranked behind Colgate in the recruiting rankings. And oh, by the way, Virginia Tech, coached by your former head coach, has 22 commitments or 21 commitments and the number 22 overall recruiting class. This is a train wreck. It's a disaster. And I'll say a couple things. One, Pat Kraft, I do think the clock is sort of ticking, right? I don't know how you recover from this. And again, maybe by the time you watch this, he has pulled a rabbit out of his hat. But the counter to that is there aren't very many rabbits left to be pulled. I don't know how Penn State fans would feel about Brian Dable. Maybe there's some wild card that I don't know about. But this is looking like a complete train wreck of a situation. Pat Kraft is on the clock. And I do think bigger picture. Did we all, and I'll include myself, did we overrate the Penn State job and Penn State situation in the modern era of college football? Because, listen, I was one, and maybe it's my Northeast. I grew up in Connecticut. I want everything in the Northeast to be great. maybe I'm a little biased on this one because I grew up, Penn State was kind of the gold standard in that part of the country. But you go ahead and look, it is kind of worth noting. Penn State, we talk about like Notre Dame living on, previous time. Like Notre Dame has played in multiple national championship games in the last 15 years. I can't even think of anybody else, but like, we talk about all these programs that are living in the past. It's like, by the way, Nebraska. Guess what? Nebraska's won 3 national titles since the last time Penn State won one. Last time Penn State won a national championship, take a guess. 1986. 1986 was the last time Penn State won a national championship. By the way, 1 Big Ten title since 2008. Okay, so 1 Big Ten title in the post-Joe Paterno era. And I understand part of that coincides with Urban Meyer really elevating Ohio State to even another level than Jim Tressel had it, winning a national championship. Ryan Day doing the same last year. Jim Harbaugh elevating Michigan. But all of a sudden, you look at this job, and it's like, maybe it isn't quite as good as we thought. And so I just bring it up. What a disaster. As we record, Penn State has no head coach. They have no recruiting class. And as I mentioned, Drew Aller's out. Katron Allen, Nick Singleton out of eligibility. A lot of the defensive guys are seniors. I don't know what becomes of this program. And now I think the scary part is you're basically, I guess if you get somebody in right away, you're kind of punting on the 2026 season where it was going to be a rebuild anyway. And you are so far behind the 8 ball. You got to get somebody in. You got to start getting ready for the portal. This is as big of a disaster as anything that I can remember. Really quickly, Matt, before we get to break, is there any Penn State related questions in the chat? If there are not, we can kind of move on to some other stuff from the week. So Big A says Penn State should just go ahead and hire Brian Kelly. So I'll be real. I actually was thinking, I was walking my dog getting ready for this show. I wasn't getting ready for the show while I was walking my dog, but I was walking my dog probably about 45 minutes before we went live here. And I said, is Brian Kelly going to mess around and get $50 million from LSU and the Penn State job? That's where it's, listen, maybe it's Brian Dable. Brian Dable, I believe, has a son or daughter that's currently at Penn State. When he got fired from the Giants job, was seen wearing Penn State gear. And he did, by the way, coach at Alabama as the offensive coordinator. So he has a little bit of college background. What a disaster, man. I mean, listen, this is no disrespect to Terry Smith, but Terry Smith is the interim. Terry Smith, I know he played there. I know he loves the school. This was a guy that had never not only been a head coach, he had never been a coordinator on either side of the football. And as I mentioned, as recently as 2012, so 13 years ago, he was coaching high school football. So anyway, what a disaster that is Penn State. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we do, want to talk about a few different things. One, we certainly want to preview the conference championship games this coming week. Also, the BYU smoke is getting pretty big. I think people are starting to kind of open up their eyes to like whether you like BYU, whether you think they're good or not. They're kind of sort of getting railroaded. And on top of getting railroaded, it could be my team next. And I think that's the important part. We'll come back, talk BYU, conference championship games. Got to talk a little college hoops, Big Pig Invasion. Rated Bud Walton on Wednesday night. Quick break. Talk a lot more. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, New era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. So listen, we're going to preview conference championship games in a second, but I want to spend a half a second talking BYU and the college football playoff rankings, okay? And so on yesterday's show, Wednesday's show, we reacted to the college football playoff rankings, and I did kind of gloss over BYU only because I felt like I had made the argument for BYU for weeks. I didn't think there was new ground to cover, okay? But as I peeled back the layers, as I started thinking about it more, and as I started thinking about the big picture of the obvious brand bias and the obvious, for lack of a better term, discrimination that BYU is getting simply because their logo isn't Alabama's or Notre Dame's, it really struck me that it is probably worth revisiting this. And if it makes me, this one's for me more than anybody else. I want to get it off my chest. I want to say my piece because I think that just a great injustice is being served with the BYU football program. And there aren't many people, although there is one that I do think is, one person I think is speaking out on behalf of BYU besides me. I think it needs to be more, but let's go ahead and dive in. And by the way, why this is important to you. It's because, again, it might be BYU this year, but next year it might be your school. Pay attention to what's going on, okay? So BYU, weird situation going on in the college football playoff rankings. And I'll say a couple things. I've already made this argument, but I believe 11 of 12 spots are essentially sealed, right, for this college football playoff. The two teams that are in the SEC championship game, I believe, are in, even if Alabama loses. Alabama, Georgia in. Indiana, Ohio State in the Big Ten are in. The three other conference champions are in, be it Texas Tech, we'll assume from the Big 12 for the sake of this argument. We'll say Virginia from the ACC. We'll say the AAC is Tulane, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But what I do think is that the final spot is going to come down to either Miami, Notre Dame, or BYU. And I think because of the head-to-head, and because of the fact that they're both huge national brands with multiple national championships, it has largely become a Miami versus Notre Dame conversation. Here's the issue. If you actually look at the facts, there is something indisputable. BYU has a better resume than both of them, okay? And let's, again, put aside the logos, put aside your personal opinion. I think the Big 12 sucks. I think Notre Dame's this. I think Miami's that. Head-to-head has to matter. Let's just go ahead and very briefly look at the resumes of those three teams specifically, and we can include Alabama. And let's just talk it through, okay? So first of all, Matt, not yet. I want to save that. So, okay, perfect. So BYU, 11-1, 8-1 in the Big 12, okay? So let's start with BYU, 11-1, 8-1 in the Big 12. So first of all, they have one fewer loss than both Miami and Notre Dame, which are both 10-2. Now, I know individual losses don't matter, shouldn't matter, whatever. We've done the Steve Sarkisian rant from this week, but 11-1 overall. BYU's only loss, so they have one less loss already to begin with. Their only loss to top 5 Texas Tech on the road. Not bad. Miami, 2 losses to unranked teams. Now, Miami will tell you both of those teams were ranked right up until the end of the season. Louisville was pretty good when they were healthy. Doesn't matter. Louisville's 8-4. SMU's 8-4. Miami has 2 losses to unranked teams. Notre Dame has 2 losses to ranked teams, but neither of them is as good as the loss that BYU has, which was at Texas Tech. Texas A&M at home for Notre Dame, Miami on the road. Neither of those is as good as at Texas Tech. So one more win, a better loss. Beyond that, also, let's not forget this. They have a couple really good wins because that's the big argument. Everybody just blindly defaults to, well, BYU hasn't beaten anybody. Okay, well, let's put aside my personal opinion about this. BYU beat Utah, which is number 15 in the college football playoff rankings, and they beat Arizona, which is in the top 20 of the college football playoff rankings. Okay. Not my opinion. This is just what the rankings tell us. So 2 top 20 wins. Notre Dame has 1 against USC. Miami has 1 against Notre Dame. More top 20 wins, more top 25 wins, whatever metric you want to use. Beyond that, and this is the important part that drives me crazy, because this whole week we've talked about how wins and losses solely should not matter, right? This is the big Texas argument. Yes, they have 3 losses, but the counter to that is that one of them was against Ohio State, and they have a bunch of great wins. And Texas shouldn't be penalized for playing Ohio State in the out of conference. So that's the big argument. Here's the issue. We already figured out a way to settle that argument a year ago because we had it with Indiana. Indiana goes 11-1. Alabama gets left out at 9-3, and the SEC makes this big stink about why is a 9-3 team that actually beat good teams being left out over an Indiana team that beat nobody. So we added this thing called strength of record. Strength of record is a metric the committee uses, and guess what? BYU is number 6 in the country. The only teams ahead of them off the top of my head, I believe, are Georgia, Texas A&M, Oregon, and I'm blank. Ole Miss is 1, and I forget who the other one is. However, BYU is ahead of Miami, Notre Dame, Vandy, Texas, among others. So again, 11-1 overall. Only lost to a top 5 team. 2 top 20 wins, something that neither Notre Dame or Miami can say. Certainly no bad losses, and a better strength of record than everybody. And yet, not only is BYU not seriously seemingly being considered, they're being mocked for even insinuating that they should be in the conversation. The college football playoff ranking show on Tuesday night, it opened with Reese Davis kind of tongue-in-cheek saying something to the effect of, yeah, Alabama's in the mix, and Miami and Notre Dame, and BYU, their fans are complaining, well, just win the Big 12 championship game. Well, nobody's saying that about Alabama. Why would you say that about BYU? They have an argument just like everybody else. But here's the scary part, and here's why I think you should care. BYU, ESPN is actively leaving BYU legitimately out of the conversation. Okay, Matt, you can now pop up that tweet that I sent you and that you referenced earlier. So this was from Tuesday night's playoff show. You can see the caption, playoff profiles comparing resumes. This is basically blind resumes, except it's not blind. They put up Alabama at 10-2, Notre Dame at 10-2, Miami at 10-2, ranked 9th, 10th, and 12th. How convenient is that they forget BYU and don't even include them on the graphic? So this is supposed to be a legitimate conversation about teams that are legitimately in the conversation, and they don't even put BYU on the graphic. And you know why? I'm guessing they didn't put BYU on the graphic. It's because if they did, everyone would realize how preposterous it is that they are not part of the conversation. That, oh my God, they actually have a better resume than not only that I realize, but that all of these teams that I'm arguing about. And so why you should care is because it might be BYU this year, and you might think BYU stinks. But next year, if you're not an Alabama or Notre Dame fan, it might be you. It might be Vandy, who nobody seems to be seriously considering for a playoff spot, even though they went 10-2 in the SEC. It might be, Northwestern or Michigan State now that they have Pat Fitzgerald. It might be Kentucky if Will Stein gets going and they're the 5th of 5 team, 6th of 5 teams in the playoff picture in the SEC. Like, it's going to be your school at some point. And so this is why you should care. And this is why you should, frankly, be advocating for BYU to at least be in the picture. Now, what I always say is stuff is always subject to change, and BYU still has a data point. They can certainly just win the Big 12 championship game and get in. But again, I don't think they should be punished if their only 2 losses are to a top 5 team on the road and on a neutral field. So it's driving me crazy. It's insane that nobody's talking about it. By the way, it's insane the Big 12 office isn't doing more, which we'll talk about in a minute. I do want to give credit to one person, though, because I think there's only one other person he certainly has a bigger platform than I do, but only one person with a national platform that isn't related to BYU in some way, somehow, who is advocating for BYU. That is Dave Portnoy. So Barstool Sports obviously now has the relationship with Fox. Dave Portnoy has been out to Provo, I believe at least once, maybe twice. He has experienced the same thing that I have. I've been to Provo twice in the last calendar year. It's a beautiful community, beautiful area. By the way, if the football team stunk, I wouldn't be advocating for him. But he loves BYU and Provo. I love BYU and Provo. He went on a rant for the ages on, I guess it was Wednesday afternoon, talking BYU. Matt, let's go ahead and play this out.
Okay, I got to do this final rant. Everybody's been talking about BYU since the rankings came out to committee. They are absolutely, undeniably getting screwed. One of the bigger screw jobs in the history of this stupid committee. And here's my problem. I'm sick of the debate. I'm sick of people trying to make cases for Notre Dame versus BYU or Miami. There is no debate. By every single metric known to mankind, BYU should be ranked ahead of Notre Dame. It shouldn't matter if BYU wins or loses the Big 12 championship. Saying they can play their way in is irrelevant. They're getting held to a different standard than every team in the history of this thing. No team in 30 years in the BYU and the Big 12 has had one loss and been outside the top 10. It's ridiculous. They played a better schedule than Notre Dame. They have 2 better wins than Notre Dame. They have half as many losses as Notre Dame. Notre Dame doesn't have one good win on their entire schedule. It's a joke, so don't debate it. My biggest issue about this is the committee pissing on my face, pissing on my head as Provo Dave and telling me it's raining. Don't try to justify it. Just be like, you know what? BYU, we don't care about you. We don't care about the Big 12. Bye-bye. This isn't a resume. This isn't who has the better season. This is just what makes the most money, who has the most local recognition. It has nothing to do with what you're doing on the field. Alabama played good in the first quarter. Alabama lost by 30 to Florida State. Shut up with all these things. There is no debate. Anybody who's even trying to come up with rationalization for this is a joke. If you're a Notre Dame fan, just say, hey, it's good to be Notre Dame. It's good not to have one good win on the entire season. It's good that we don't have to do anything. But since we have those Golden Domer helmets and we don't have to play in a conference, we get an advantage versus everybody else. It's figure skating. It's gymnastics. It's judgment. It's subjective.
There was still about a minute left in that rant. I think you got the gist of it, though. And the line that I loved and the line that I agreed with is Dave said by every single metric known to mankind, BYU should be ranked ahead of Notre Dame. It's the truth. Again, strength of record is the one that's supposed to matter. Doesn't matter for BYU. Overall wins, top 20 wins, fewer losses, good loss. None of it seems to matter, and it's driving me crazy. Now, the one thing I will say, and this is what's kind of bothering me, why is Dave Portnoy? Why is Aaron Torres with obviously, I'm not comparing myself to Dave Portnoy. He's got, he owns the biggest media company, whatever. I'm not comparing myself. Why are the two of us the only ones that are fighting this fight? Where is the Big 12 office? And I go back to, I remember we did a segment in July on this show. Brett Yormark at Big 12 Media Day said, we expect to have 2 teams in the college football playoff this year. Well, guess what, Brett Yormark? You're in position to do it right now. Why are you so quiet? Why are you not speaking? Why are you not defending yourself and standing up for your schools? That part to me is embarrassing because whatever you think about Steve Sarkisian making the case for 9-3 Texas, which I think is preposterous, at least Steve Sarkisian's out there fighting for his team. Mario Cristobal out there fighting for Miami. You go on and on down the list. Who else? I'm trying to think. Clark Lee was out there fighting for Vandy. Who's out there fighting for BYU? Pavia apparently is doing interviews left and right. Pavia does so much media, I can't even keep up with it. So where is Brett Yormark? Where is the Big 12? The Big 12, to its credit, finally seemed to get into the conversation very late in the process. I would argue way too late. I did see a tweet on late Wednesday that you could pop up, Matt, from the Big 12 official page where it says, best overall record, advantage BYU. Highest strength of record, advantage BYU. Highest strength of schedule, advantage BYU. Most wins versus the CFP top 25, advantage BYU. Best record, advantage BYU. Playing in a conference championship game, obviously advantage BYU. So listen, I understand a lot of you are SEC people. Maybe you're Big Ten people. Maybe you don't care about the Big 12. Maybe you think that the Big 12 stinks. Maybe you think that BYU stinks. I disagree. And I'll also say this. I am open to the conversation, just like I am with Alabama, by the way. I've said it all week. If Alabama loses 72-0, knock them out of the playoff. I don't think it should be a be-all, end-all, but I don't think you should get an auto buy into the playoffs just because you made it to Atlanta. Same thing with BYU. They lose 38-0 and have 27 yards of total offense, then it is what it is. But we're doing the show right now, and as of right now at about noon Eastern on Thursday, I think BYU is getting railroaded. By the way, before we get to my conference championship picks, King says this. I love this. He said, Vandy's getting screwed too. Listen, let's put it this way. I don't think Vandy has a huge leg to stand on because the two best teams they played, they lost to, Texas and Alabama. But let's also play devil's advocate. If Alabama had the same resume as Vandy, people would be fighting harder for Alabama. If Georgia or LSU had the same resume as Vandy, people would be fighting harder for Georgia and LSU. And I know that complicates it because Vandy beat LSU, but you get the point. Is that I think there's some major brand bias going up against Vandy. By the way, should mention this. It comes down to money. BYU isn't a premier brand school like Bama, etc. AF Warrior is 100% correct. And then King says this. I love this. When the worst person you know is right. I assume he's talking about me. Oh, he's talking about, I think he might be talking about Portnoy. I don't know. But whatever. I hope it's not me. I think I'm a pretty decent guy. But listen, I give you guys in the chat credit. I think you're seeing the forest through the trees. You're seeing the big picture. BYU is absolutely getting screwed. We'll see what happens on Saturday. But I think their fans have a right to be frustrated. With that said, we do have conference championship games this weekend. I'll make some picks on these. I don't know. First of all, I'm not going to do the whole rant now. We just got to get rid of conference championship games. I guess the Big 12, it matters. The ACC, in theory, matters. The SEC and the Big 10, there's just no juice to them at all, specifically the SEC. But the games are being played, so let's make picks really quick. Let's start with the SEC, Georgia versus Alabama. So Georgia versus Alabama, they are playing Saturday in Atlanta, 4 p.m. Eastern time. In that one, Georgia is about a 3.5-point favorite, according to the Circa Sportsbook. I'll just be transparent. Let me even be before I be transparent. I'll be transparent about something else. Weird game to handicap, right? Am I the only one that feels like this is a very tough game to handicap? Because on the one hand, you have a situation where Georgia is clearly playing better than Alabama is, right? Georgia has won a bunch of big games late. They smacked Texas at home. They beat Georgia Tech the other day in Atlanta. And Georgia, to its credit, and I was critical early when they barely beat Tennessee and they barely beat Ole Miss, Georgia is playing its best football down the stretch. They've won 8 straight coming into this one. That includes, again, Georgia Tech on what was essentially a neutral field, but it was essentially a road game, but it was a neutral field. They beat Texas. They destroyed Texas, destroyed Mississippi State, a team that had given other teams problems. And so Georgia's clearly playing better as opposed to Alabama, which survived the Iron Bowl, survived South Carolina, got beat by Oklahoma, whatever. I'll tell you this. I'm going to go ahead and probably surprise you. I will actually take Alabama to win and Alabama to obviously cover the 2.5 points. I'll say Alabama 24-21. Reason why is a couple things. One, I do think there's a psychological thing with Alabama and Georgia. My buddy Ryan Fowler says it well. Kirby Smart used to have a Nick Saban problem. Now he has an Alabama problem, as Alabama has beaten him twice with Kalen DeBoer as its head coach. I think the other thing is, it's easy to say that Alabama is struggling down the stretch, and I do think they were playing their best football in mid to late September, okay? But at the same time, what I would also say is this. Look at some of those losses. The Oklahoma game, listen, Oklahoma deserves credit. Their defense is amazing. But the Oklahoma game, 4 yards of Oklahoma, and they were in a situation late where they were driving with a chance to get in field goal range to win the game. Sketchy play calling. Not saying Ryan Grubb isn't to blame, but they could have easily beaten Oklahoma. I'm not going to criticize them for the Iron Bowl, where that is, one, a really tough place to play as Nick Saban, and two, Auburn is a very talented team. So I will say Alabama wins 24-21 or 24-20, excuse me. Obviously, the betting pick is Alabama money line. I think they get the victory. Really quickly, Big 10 championship game, excuse me. This one in beautiful Lucas Oil Stadium, Indianapolis. By the way, fun day for Indiana fans. Indiana basketball plays Louisville in Indianapolis on Saturday afternoon. Then the nightcap at Lucas Oil Stadium. Ohio State a 4-point favorite in the Circus Sportsbook, over under set at 48. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. I like Indiana to win, and I like Indiana to cover in this game as well. Listen, Ohio State's a great story, okay? But if you go ahead and you actually peel back that Michigan game, they were sort of kind of on the ropes a little bit early. You know, the Michigan scores the field goal, then Julian Sayin throws the pick. And I think what happened very quickly is Ohio State realized we can just wear down Michigan with the run game. And if you actually watch the game, and I know literally millions of you did, it was a game where Ohio State basically didn't even really have to and didn't even really try to open it up because they were able to run the ball so effectively, almost 200 yards rushing, over 4 yards per carry. And so I bring it up because I think they're going to have to be a little bit more dynamic. I think they're going to have to put more on Julian Sayin's plate. And while Julian Sayin certainly has the talent around him, especially at the wide receiver position, one, Indiana is elite everywhere as far as defensively. Now, listen, I think at this point, sorry, I got a little itch on my nose here. I think at this point, Indiana's talent is kind of comparable to Michigan's. Indiana's been ascending. Indiana has hit the portal well. Michigan has been descending over the last couple of years. And so you look at Indiana, even on defense, you know, D'Angelo Pon's their best corner is like a day 2 NFL draft pick. Like we're talking about a second round NFL draft pick. Aiden Fisher, like they have talent all over that field. They're certainly more dynamic than Michigan. And I think the other thing too with Ohio State is, as good as that defense has been, if you actually go ahead and look it up, I actually looked it up this week. They've played statistically some of the worst offenses in power conference football. And as a matter of fact, the top 3 offenses in the Big 10, they did not play this year. That would be USC, Indiana, and Oregon. Ohio State played none of them, and I believe it was 4 of the top 5 overall they did not play, and that includes obviously the only one out of the top 5 that they is Ohio State is in the top 5. So basically, the top 4 offenses besides them, they did not play. So I have doubts over just how good this offense is, and I have doubts over just how good this defense is, and I don't think they've seen anything like Mendoza and this Indiana passing attack with Surratt at wide receiver and with Omar Cooper Jr. at wide receiver. I think it's the best wide receiver core they've seen. I think it's the best quarterback that they've seen. You know, the defense, I think, is comparable to some of the better teams that they've played. And, you know, it's funny. I was watching like an interview with Urban Meyer, and he's like, yeah, Indiana's been struggling down the stretch. Indiana just beat Purdue 56-3 2 weeks ago, okay? Or last week, excuse me. So I think Indiana wins. I think they surprise some people. I do think they get the victory. Really quickly, just did my big rant on BYU. They are facing Texas Tech in Jerry World. First of all, very cool situation there, as it is a complete sellout at Jerry World. I don't know what the totality is, but we're talking about 80,000 tickets. Might be the best venue, and it might be the best atmosphere in conference championship weekend. Now, it's tough to say because Indiana fans are going to take over Lucas Oil Stadium, but I just bring it up because ticket prices to get into the Big 12 championship game are at right around $100. As I said, a complete sellout. By the way, if you're going to any of these games, remember, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. So, back to the preview. I know I just made the big case for BYU. I also think a couple other things are true. Texas Tech is a really good football team. And I think Texas Tech, like, they're, first of all, elite defensively. Their whole defense is going to play in the NFL. And we could talk about NIL this, how'd they get these players that. I don't really care. Everybody has NIL. And so the bottom line to me is this. They got dudes that can play. I think they're going to surprise some people in the college football playoff. And I think specifically they're a bad matchup for BYU. BYU wants to beat you with physicality. They want to wear you down. They want to overwhelm you. BYU has this issue where they fall down early in games, and because they're so physical and tough and they can run the ball, they end up overwhelming you late. Can't do that against Texas Tech, and I think we saw that in game 1. And so I think Texas Tech wins. I think they clinch that top 4 seed in the college football playoff. And listen, the BYU conversation is separate. We could do that another time. And I just did it 10 minutes ago. I don't know if they get in, and I don't think they get in if they end up losing this game. So I'll say Texas Tech 20, BYU 10. I do think the BYU defense shows up. But when BYU's whole ethos is we can wear you down, you can't do that against Texas Tech. I like Texas Tech to win this game. Really quickly, the ACC, which might as well be the AAC at this point. I'd be lying if I said I had a super strong opinion. Virginia, a 3.5-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook. I'll give Virginia a little bit of credit. They have been a pretty good team over the course of this season. Now, some of their wins didn't really hold up the way we thought. They beat Florida State on that Friday night. Everybody thought it was this great win. It really wasn't. Louisville, they beat Louisville. Louisville kind of falls apart late. They're a solid team, but the one thing that does stand out to me is that they just beat Duke a few weeks ago, and that game was at Duke. And I'm just curious to see, will they be able to get up for a second time against the team they just beat? I'll take Virginia. I have no strong opinions. My only opinion about the ACC championship game, if we're going to keep conference championship games, get rid of all these dumb tiebreakers, 2 highest ranked teams in the final conference standings. Miami should be there. We should not have a second ACC representative if Miami, one of these 2 teams, if they were to play Miami and lose, should not be in. Miami should be the whatever. Don't like it, whatever. Anyway, Virginia wins. I don't know. We'll say, what did I say? Did I give a score? I don't know. We'll say 27-20. That was the score of the last one. We'll go ahead and take that. AAC, I'm really into the North Texas story, and I get why Eric Morris chose to go where he went, Oklahoma State. I do think Arkansas kind of pursued him. I think he said, let me go to the Big 12. Let me see if I can win there, because it's just an easier pathway to the college football playoff. Offense versus defense. Listen, I love John Summerall. We know we've had him on the show. I think he's going to do good things at Florida, but I do just worry about, is that offense going to be able, or is the Tulane offense going to be able to go score for score against North Texas? So I'll go ahead and take North Texas. I think it's going to be fascinating watching Eric Morris and his quarterback go to Oklahoma State and the success that they could potentially have. So conference championship game predictions: Alabama 24, Georgia 20. Indiana wins outright. I don't even remember what I said, 27-20, something like that. I will take BYU and Texas Tech. I'll take Texas Tech 20-10. Probably the under is the best bet there. And then I will take Virginia to beat Duke and North Texas to beat Tulane. By the way, no strong opinions on the all of a sudden interesting Sun Belt Conference Championship game. Obviously, I think the story there, as we all know, if James Madison wins that game and if Duke wins the ACC championship game, James Madison could get in. By the way, some late breaking news. I just saw this as Bob Chesney gets set to go to UCLA. Did you see who's reportedly set to replace him? Cover your ears, cover your eyes. It looks like Billy Napier could be the next head coach at James Madison. All right, so James Madison fans, enjoy the Bob Chesney era for one more game. That's all I'm going to say. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we do, we'll talk a little college hoops. Arkansas, Big Pig invasion. Calipari owns Louisville. It is official. We'll take a quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Callie Puffs and CalliePuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Callie Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan, and one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Callie Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Callie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CalliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, CalliePuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. Callipuffs.com gets you 15% off. Callipuffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but Callipuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Callipuffs. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Want to go ahead and get to some college hoops. Before we do, though, should mention, we got to give a quick shout out to our friends and our hotel and casino partners, Circa Sportsbook and the Circa Casino. Okay, and it's worth noting, by the way, especially as we get set to talk Arkansas, Louisville, the new Circa Sportsbook, not that far from Louisville, down at Mint Kentucky Downs. Okay, so we're going to get into Arkansas, Louisville in half a second. But it's that time of year. All sorts of games going on. You know, you want to watch the college football bowl games, you know, college basketball starting to ramp up. You don't want to download a million different apps, right? And so if you're in Vegas, you can go to the beautiful Circa Sportsbook in Vegas. But I know a lot of you can't get to Vegas. Well, guess what? New Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs in beautiful Franklin, Kentucky. Okay, so as I said, about 40 minutes from Nashville. It's about 90 or so minutes from Louisville. Looked it up on a map the other day. But if you want to watch games, this is the best place to do it. All the great hospitality, all the great amenities of the Circa Sportsbook have now come to the East Coast. Mint Kentucky Downs in beautiful Franklin, Kentucky. As I said, 35, 40 minutes from Nashville, about 90 minutes or so from Louisville. Check it out. Beautiful place. You don't need a million apps. Best place to watch all these games. Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs. By the way, if everything goes to plan, I will be doing my show from Mint Kentucky Downs next week. I got to go out to Nashville next weekend, so I'm probably going to shoot down to the Mint on Thursday to do our show. So if you're watching it this time next week, you might be seeing Torres from the old Mint. All right, let's go ahead and wrap the show. A lot of college football over the last couple days, but time to talk a little college hoops. Okay, so the SEC ACC Challenge has gone on over the last couple days. And, we talked a lot about Tuesday's results on yesterday's show. Kentucky losing to UNC, Duke beating Florida, on and on. Big game, headline game, top 25 matchup on Wednesday night at Bud Walton Arena. The Arkansas Razorbacks hosting the Louisville Cardinals. Arkansas coming off of that disappointing Thanksgiving Day loss that, by the way, monster TV number. What was the stat? I think it was the highest rated TV game or highest rated college basketball regular season game in like 30 years, something crazy like that. It was on CBS on Thanksgiving. So shout out to Arkansas. They were in the game late. We're not going to get into Cam Boozer and all of his, all the hooks that he does there. Call him Captain Hook because he had quite a few. But listen, back home on Wednesday night, needed a win. Undefeated top 10 ranked Louisville comes to town. And well, guess what, baby? It's been a while, but I can say it definitively. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? The answer is no, as the Arkansas Razorbacks get the 89-80 win, knocking off the top 10 ranked Louisville Cardinals. And oh, by the way, I've kind of forgotten this. It continues a trend of John Calipari just owns Louisville. Okay, so Matt, you could pop up the tweet that I found on Wednesday morning or Thursday morning. Calipari, dating back to the start of his tenure at Kentucky, has now won 14 of 17 against Louisville. That included a game in the Final Four. It included a game in the Sweet 16. He is now 1-0 against the Louisville Cardinals as the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. I think if you're an Arkansas fan, here's the positive. You played really well early, and he didn't really play that well for about probably 65, 70% of the second half. First half was the best half I think Arkansas has maybe played all year, especially given the competition, okay? And the one thing that I wanted to see out of Arkansas in this game, I wanted to see the physicality down low, okay? Because you go back to the two losses. One, the Michigan State game, I just think they kind of got bullied. And I think John Calipari thought they got bullied too, right? And so I bring it up because in that game, the Bigs were not good enough. We talked about it after that game. Duke, they were certainly much better. Cam Boozer went off. We can argue about the refs. We can argue about this and that. But I thought this was a game where your big guys had to show up. And I thought you had to show up with the energy, effort, and want to beat a good top 10 team at home. Well, that's exactly what they did. Started the game. They're up 18 at the half. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think Louisville was about 3 of 20 or so. Or I think they made maybe not 3 of 20, but they were like 3 of 12, 3 of 13 from behind the 3-point arc. The defense was there. The effort was there. The energy was there. The rebounding was there. Trevin Brazil was hitting everything early on. And I bring it up because it was probably the best half of basketball that you played. Now, in some ways, the good news is you did not play well in the second half and you still managed to win. For people who did not see the game, that 20-point lead at one point, it was 18 at the half. It became a 20-point game at one point. It was cut to 4 with about 2.5 minutes to go. Darius Acuff lobbed to Trevin Brazil, and the game was basically a wrap from there. So Arkansas wins. I think big picture, there are a lot of things that you have to be happy about if you're an Arkansas fan. One, the freshmen were a little bit inconsistent. Certainly Darius Acuff, he was good. I'm not trying to be mean, but some forced shots, some struggles early on the offensive glass. Those two freshmen are stone cold freaking killers, okay? Acuff, again, I think early was pressing maybe a little bit too much offensively. Late, he has the big and one. Late, I just referenced, he has the lob to Trevin Brazil. Late, he has another bucket. And all of a sudden, you look up and the kid finishes with, finishes a game with 17 points, 10 assists, and 5 rebounds. So he played great. Malik Thomas was kind of the guy before Acuff got going in probably the final, 2.5 minutes. Malik Thomas was the guy that in between was hitting all the big shots. I'll say this. I think Malik Thomas, to me, has largely been a revelation. And listen, there are so many great freshmen in this class that guys just get lost, right? Everybody wants to talk about Cam Boozer and DeBonsa and Nate Amen and whoever, Kingston Flemings at Houston, okay? Caleb Wilson's been awesome. You just go on and on down the list. There are so many good freshmen. And so I bring it up, even at Arkansas, Darius Acuff has been so good that I think Malik Thomas gets lost in the shuffle. Malik Thomas, I feel like more than any player on that team, every time I watch them, when they need a big shot, when they need a big basket, he comes through. In this game, he finishes off the bench with 17 points, 4 of 10, 8 of 9 from the foul line. He comes through big late. And I think the other thing that was big was this. Was one, I mentioned Trevin Brazil. Early in the game, he goes off. Then he goes out with an ankle injury. But to me, he is still the X factor. And I still believe in my heart of hearts that there is not a guy I think he is one of the biggest mismatches in all of college basketball. You're playing him at the 4 at 6'10", 6'11". He's got that 40-inch vertical leap. The things he can do defensively. I don't know that there are many teams that have a guy that can match up with him, but you have to see the best version of him. I would say he certainly, and I think he would argue that he was not the best version of himself throughout parts of this season, but 21 points in this game, 3 3-pointers, including one late, a couple in the first half. He's awesome. And then I think, what the really big X factor for me was? The big guys down low, specifically Malik Ewan. And it's funny, I didn't have Matt pull the sound, but after the game, Cal does a press conference, and he said, what the big story of this game was? Malik Ewan. And remember, Malik Ewan is a transfer from Florida State. And it was so funny because Cal goes, he was at Florida State. He played Louisville twice last year. And I watched the tape. He was awesome. And so I pulled the tape and I showed it to him and I said, that guy right there, that's who I want you to be. I want you to watch it before bed tonight. I want you to watch it when you get up. I want you to watch it again. And I want you to come in with that mindset. Then apparently before the game, and I don't know if Cal told Malik Ewan he was going to do this, he showed the tape to the whole team. And he told the team, he's like, this is the guy that he is capable of being. You guys need to hold him to that standard. And so it's kind of funny. It's kind of brilliant coaching. Is like he basically just put it on Malik Ewan like, hey, I need you to be that guy. Do you want to be the guy you've been, or do you want to be this guy? And then he put it out there for the whole team to see of like, this is what this guy is capable of. Y'all need to hold him to that standard. And so to me, this is the X factor. One, it's Trevin Brazil. But two, the 5 spot's been kind of really hit or miss early in the season for the Arkansas Razorback. It wasn't on Wednesday night. Malik Ewan played his best game as a Razorback, 12 points, 9 rebounds in this game. And listen, Cal is who he is. He wants to be physical down low. He wants to have a physical presence. One of these guys needs to step up. And so to me, I think that it's going to be Malik Ewan, and I think this is a good harbinger of things to come. I think if you're also looking for a silver lining with Arkansas, not playing their best basketball right now. I still think they're trying to figure out the pieces. Carter Knox, they made it a point on the broadcast to reference early on, like, hey, they need to get him going. They want to get him going. I think it was 2 points against Michigan State, none against Duke, or vice versa. He was averaging 1 point per game against Duke and Michigan State. I know that. And so they got him going early, and then he was kind of quiet. And I think you can see right now he's pressing a little bit. He had that missed layup, play where it was kind of reviewed, whatever. But I still think he's a first-round NBA pick. He's not playing like it right now. It's not to say he won't get there. It's to say that they need more out of him. And then DJ Wagner's the same. Everybody knows where I stand on DJ Wagner. I think he's a great college point guard. Kind of a weird situation. They're putting the ball in Acuff's hands more now, so we'll see what happens with DJ Wagner. But I think if you're an Arkansas fan, you got to be positive, because it's like, darn it, man, we didn't even play that well. We still beat a top 10 team at home by 9. The entire Arkansas athletic department has been waiting for a win like that. And I think you have some positive momentum going into the back half of December. I think what's also interesting, Cal was just like, dude, we just need to get in the win column and convince ourselves that we could win this game. And he referenced 5 major out-of-conference games for the Arkansas Razorbacks. 2 coming into Wednesday were in the books. Lost at Michigan State. As time goes on and on, that is that's a good loss. It just is, especially on the road. You lose to Duke. Again, it was right there for the taking. Thanksgiving Day, you end up losing that game. And you sit there and say, man, when is it going to be our turn? Well, the turn came on whatever it was, Wednesday night. And the good thing is now you have a little momentum going to the back half of December, where you still have 2 more marquee out-of-conference games. You play Texas Tech. Next Saturday, so not this coming Saturday. Weird game against Fresno, by the way. Don't know why Fresno is coming to Arkansas. I think the game is in Little Rock, but just a weird opponent. Whatever, not my business. You get Texas Tech a week from now, and then 2. So I guess it's 3 Saturdays from now, including this one, the Saturday before Christmas, which is crazy to talk about how quickly we are to Christmas. You get Houston in Barclays Center. That is going to be a very interesting game. But Arkansas, listen, the talent's there. I got the sense watching Cal, he wasn't worried, but you got to get over the hump. You get that win. And like I said, I don't even think you could sit there and say you played an A-plus game or even an A game, maybe a B+. A lot of things to work on, and it shows you what the ceiling of this team can be. And I'll add this really quick as we get into some of the other games from Wednesday night, is that the SEC appears to me to be wide open. It's certainly not as good as it was last year. But then on top of it, Kentucky's obviously struggling. Florida's struggling. Alabama's good, but I have some questions about Bama. Tennessee is good, but I have some questions about Tennessee. So the SEC is wide open. You know who I actually really like out of the SEC? The Auburn Tigers. Producer Matt's Auburn Tigers. So Auburn hosts NC State in this ACC SEC challenge. And Auburn does get the victory in this game, 83-73. Okay, so Auburn, first of all, and you can see it on the ticker, Kevin Overton, transfer from Texas Tech. I could do the whole Shaq, I was not familiar with your game. No one was familiar with that Kevin Overton, okay, because 29 points, had not scored more than 13 in a game all season this year, but he was awesome in this game, okay? Now, bigger picture, I'll say this. I think Auburn is actually the best team that I've seen in the SEC, or at minimum, I like how all the pieces fit the best. Now, they went to the Players era. They lost to Michigan. Listen, Michigan might be the best team in college basketball. You could put Michigan number 1. You could put Arizona number 1. You could put Purdue number 1. You could put UConn number 1. There's a lot of teams, but Michigan is in that conversation. Michigan did that to everyone in Vegas last week. So you lose to Michigan, and then you lost a game to Houston that you easily could have won. But what has stood out to me early on about the Auburn Tigers is I just really like the pieces, right? And I think there are a lot of schools like Kentucky. Do the pieces fit? We don't know. Tennessee needs some pieces to step up. Alabama really like their guards, kind of hit or miss on the big guys. I just really like the guys that Auburn has. Okay, so they have Tahad Pettiford, who's my guy. Love Tahad Pettiford, Northeast guy from Jersey. Was awesome in that Final Four run. Keyshawn Hall was awesome in that game. He's kind of a bigger wing, was the leading scorer in the Big 12 last year at Central Florida. But then some of the other guys that they have as well. Keyshawn Murphy's a guy that I've always liked, played at Mississippi State over the last couple of years. The Elijah Freeman kid, if you remember him from portal season, he was a D2 guy, 0 Division I scholarship offers. He ends up going off at the D2 level, goes into the portal. Everybody wanted him. Tennessee wanted him. Kentucky wanted him. Auburn ends up getting him. He's a little bit of a work in progress, but I think he's going to go ahead and get there. And then, like I said, some of the guys off the bench, Jovic from overseas. I really do like how the pieces fit. We'll see with Stephen Pearl how it all ends up going. Listen, I don't think Stephen Pearl's been an issue through the first couple of weeks. I mean, I know it's his first time head coaching. I know some people are mad about how he got the job. Auburn looks good to me. I think they're actually I don't know that they have the highest upside of everybody in the SEC. I'd probably say maybe that's Arkansas, maybe it's Alabama, but I think Auburn is probably the best team that I've seen. They get the win over NC State. NC State, I'll say this, everyone knows I'm a Will Wade guy. They're 5-3. They lost twice in Maui. Will Wade will tell you the defensive effort is not good enough. Gave up 83 in this one after giving up 102 to Texas in their Maui finale third-place game. Or I guess it was, fifth-place game, whatever. Speaking of Texas, listen, they hosted Virginia on Wednesday night. I got to give a little bit of credit to the University of Virginia, okay? So Virginia, listen, for years, they were the super slow, super boring team under Tony Bennett. I am here to tell you that is not this team right now, okay? So for people who have not watched Virginia, remember Ryan Odom, who was the famous coach that beat Virginia in the tournament at UMBC. He was at VCU last year. He comes into Virginia, and he's like, we're modernizing everything. We're modernizing the way we play. We're modernizing NIL. And what they did was so crazy. So we talk about all these international players that are in college right now. They have 2 dudes that are legitimate NBA prospects that, frankly, no one else even recruited because nobody even took into consideration that these guys would come from Europe to play college basketball, okay? So Testa Ritter on the screen, you can see there in this game, had 13 points. He is from Belgium. Listen, I'm not a international recruiting expert. I'm pretty sure this kid is like 22 and played for the Belgium national team. Okay. Like this kid's pretty decorated as an international guy. In this game, had 15 points and 6 boards. And then Johan Grunlow is another one who came from overseas. He's a little bit younger, from Germany. He's another one that's a legitimate NBA draft prospect. So Virginia was like, bro, whatever perception you had of us, it ain't that way anymore. They went out. They were very aggressive in the international market, in the NIL market. And now you sit there and look at Virginia. They're sitting there at 7-1 overall, just bullied Texas. Their only loss is to Butler, which is a pretty good team out of the Big East. And overall, I would just say net positive week for the ACC in the ACC SEC Challenge. I know that the SEC ended up winning the challenge 9-7 overall, but remember last year it was 14-2. 9-7. Virginia wins at Texas. Syracuse beats Tennessee. Miami beats Ole Miss. UNC beats Kentucky. All this says to me is all of these schools that went out and either spent money like UNC or got new coaches, Virginia's won, Miami's won, whatever, they figured out how to get the right coach and allocate the resources. So I thought even though the SEC won the challenge 9-7 overall, thought it was a net positive week for the ACC. And I'll tell you this, as college football starts to ramp down. Now, we still got the playoff in the portal, so we're going to have plenty of college football, but I think it's I think we're going to get some more college basketball in this show going forward. Matt, before we get out of here, any last questions, comments, thoughts, anything interesting? Okay, so Brooke, thank you for listening. Brooke, she says, I agree. BYU should be ahead of Notre Dame. Their strength of schedule is 35. Notre Dame's is 42. Bama, I can see why they are ahead of them with strength of record at 8 and strength of schedule at 11. But with this committee, who even knows? Yeah, Brooke, so I'll be real. I agree with you. I don't think Bama should be punished for being in the SEC championship game. And I think, to me, I try to have no bias. I try to have no brand bias. I try to have no conference bias. I think the SEC should get 5 teams into this thing. I don't think Notre Dame has much of a resume right now. And I actually think Notre Dame's playing as well as everybody, but I don't think – I think the one thing the committee, whatever we think about them, I think they have to be careful just getting too deep into the eye test, because the eye test says that Notre Dame's been awesome. There's nothing on the resume, though, that says they're better than BYU and certainly Miami, who they lost to head-to-head. And so, Brooke, I'm with you. I think BYU should be ahead of Notre Dame. We'll see what happens with BYU in the Big 12 championship game. I'll tell you what, I think that's going to go ahead and be it. Brooke says, Brooke's mad with my Auburn basketball take. She says, you have to be kidding me. Auburn has lost to everyone, but I get they aren't as bad as people think because they didn't get blown out by anyone. Well, they did get blown out by Michigan. They did beat St. John's, though. Big Rick Energy, Rick Pitino. Maybe Brooke's talking about Auburn football. I don't know. All right, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the show, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcast, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. I'll tell you what, I mentioned this the other day. We'll be back Sunday morning. Listen, I know all of your favorite college sports, college football podcasts will be reacting to the bracket as soon as it comes out. I don't think it really makes sense for us to wait. One, it certainly doesn't make sense for us to go live at 11 like we normally do, because there's only going to be one thing to talk about when the bracket comes out, and I believe that's at noon Eastern. And so I'm not going to wait till the nighttime, whatever. We'll get on, we'll react. Hopefully you tune in to listen. But we'll get out of here. Thank you for your support, and we will talk again soon. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you have fed. Unblock me. By the way, again, CollyPuffs.com, promo code Torres, 15% off your purchase. Promo code Torres for SeatGeek.com. Use promo code Torres to get $20 off your first purchase. And thank you to Circuit Casino and Sportsbook. Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all.